Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Eden Road podcast, where on today's show we're going to be previewing the Villa game on Saturday night at the Gtech. Delighted to be joined by Luke from the UTV Fan Channel. Luke, how you doing, mate?
Yep, good, mate. Thank you for having me back on your show.
No worries. All good. Just before we get going, guys, remember to drop a comment down below. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, and also give us a follow on the socials at the Eden Road on Twitter, at Eden Road Pod on Instagram. Luke, I think we'll start with last night because comfortable win for Villa in the Champions League. You take that 3-1 lead back to Villa Park next week. Excited to be kind of looking like you're on your way to a Champions League quarterfinal?
Yeah, mate. Over the moon, to be fair. In the Champions League, in the European Cup state, we've never not got to the quarterfinals. So it looks like we are continuing our record of doing pretty well in the European Cup. The first time we won it, second time quarters, third time looks potentially quarters. And I think this whole campaign has just been, as a fan, the best I've ever experienced playing in the Champions League, hearing the anthem. I feel like it just hits differently, like the goals and the celebrations and just the feeling of what's at stake. And Club Brugge, it was a tough game because they'd already beat us in sort of like the group phase, so there was a bit of trepidation going into it. The fact that we got the 2-goal lead now going back into Villa Park, it puts us in real good shape. So yeah, I think every Villa fan is buzzing at the minute.
The other thing though is that if you do get past Bruges, it sets up a nice juicy quarterfinal against one of PSG or Liverpool. How are you feeling about that?
Well, I've said from the start of the whole campaign that I do not want to play any English team because I don't know, it just feels like we have enough of playing against our English teams. I would hate to go out to Liverpool, not going to lie. So I'm really rooting for PSG, who I think could give Liverpool a real tough game, to be fair. So, and I'm not saying PSG aren't good. I just feel like I don't want to go out to an English team. So that's where I'm at with that current situation.
No, that's fair enough. I do agree. I think it's been nice, this format of the Champions League with not a lot of, you get the games that you don't really see too often. I feel like in previous editions of the Champions League, we've kind of seen all the matchups before, whereas this time we've had yourselves against Celtic and Bayern. It's obviously that there's a caveat there that you guys haven't been in the Champions League for plus 40 years, but I do feel like it was getting a little bit repetitive, and the new format I actually think's really worked. I feel like all of the match days have been a bit of a spectacle. You're seeing teams that don't regularly play each other. But just on cup competitions as well, Luke, we just had this conversation on your kind of opposition preview as well. But I do want to ask you, because I think it's a really interesting question in terms of, you're in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, you've got Preston, so it's likely that you're going to go through in that competition. But I asked you on your channel, which competition would Villa fan, or if you had the FA Cup in one hand and you had a deep run in the Champions League in the other, which one would you guys take as Villa fans?
I'll answer exactly the same, so I'll remain consistent. I think it's such a tough question because there's two different sides to football now, and I think we're all fully aware of it. There's the playing side on the pitch, which we all love, which is something that is the most fun aspect of supporting your team, and there's the off-field stuff, which is it's just as important now. You've got to get that right, and we're getting £3 million every time we win a game in the Champions League. We got 9 million for getting top 8. We've banked around 80-90 million just in the Champions League, which for PSR, a club that has got PSR, well, we did have, but I think we're sort of okay now. You've got those problems. That's huge for us. So we have to keep trying to aspire to getting in it. But then on the other hand, we haven't won a trophy since 1996. And as a football fan, I don't know how you react to winning a trophy because I've never won one with Villa. And I was too early to remember that in 96. So I think selfishly as a fan now, I'm getting to the point where I have to see us win a trophy and I want to see us win a trophy. I think the off-field is going to kind of take care of itself. So, yeah, I think winning trophies is absolutely huge. And I know you mentioned on our show, which I kind of didn't back it up, that Emery has messed about in cup competitions with Villa domestically. We lost to Stevenage 2 years ago in the FA Cup at home. We lost to Palace in the Carabao Cup at home where he rotated. And I feel like he's now sort of looked at the FA Cup and thought, I've got to stop messing about here. Like, we can win a trophy, and I think he's gone pretty strong in every FA Cup game. We've beat West Ham, we've beat Spurs, we've beat Cardiff, we've now got Preston. So, we're close to getting to Wembley, and I think we can't really turn our nose up at trophies. So, trophy for me.
Yeah, no, correct decision. Let us know in the comments because that's an interesting question in terms of, and it kind of rings true with Brentford fans as well because Thomas Frank is historically, well, not historically, but this season in particular, I don't think it's kind of gone down well with a lot of fans about his rotation in the cup competitions. But really interesting question. You mentioned the off the pitch stuff. Something that's going to help you go strong on both fronts is the January signings. Andreas Garcia, Donyell Marlon, Marcus Rashford, and Marco Asensio all in January. Asensio on the score sheet again last night. I think that's 5 and 4 for him since he joined. How would you assess those guys' impact? I don't think have we seen Garcia yet? No, we haven't.
Yes, so he's playing at right back, but he wasn't included in the Champions League squad. So he's actually been starting games. He's been playing really well. He's looking really bright, to be fair. So he's someone that I've really been impressed with. You signed him for like £7 million from I think it was Levante, a second team in like La Liga. So he's done really well. But I really admire what we did in January, because I think as a club you could have just gone, you know what, like, we're having a bit of an inconsistent season. We'll try and get Europe. We've got to sort of like the knockouts of the Champions League. Let's just rest on our laurels and sort of not sort of go out and try and strive to be better. And the fact that we really attacked the window and brought in Asensio and Rashford especially, and Marlon, is, it's commendable really that's what we went out and did. And they've been bought in for moments like the Champions League and for big games. Like if we get to the semi-final of the FA Cup, they've been bought in for those moments to really step up and win matches for us. Asensio at the minute, he like you say, he's got 5 goals now. I think he's so frequent within his scoring. It's unbelievable. I think he's scoring every 63 minutes at the minute that he plays for Villa. So, yeah, just quality. And Rashford, he's smiling, he's pressing, he's running, he's doing all the things that we've been told that he can't do. So, really pleasing how they've sort of slotted in. And like Asensio, he's won the Champions League 3 times. He scored in a Champions League final. So he's got that sort of like mentality of what we need in this moment in time.
Agree. I think those January signings were a real statement of intent, and it's on a personal level for Marcus Rashford. It's really nice to see him kind of back to his best. Anyway, I've watched Villa a couple of times since he signed Rashford, because there was a lot on that game when he made his first appearance, and he looks like he's back to his best, and I couldn't be happier for him, because it's kind of his name is kind of a buzzword. It became a buzzword a little bit, just in terms of he didn't even really seem like a person at one point. It was just like Rashford. That's a thing that we have to like overanalyze and always talk about him. But it's nice to see him enjoying his football again. And I think if there's anyone that's going to get the best out of him, Emery would be the guy. But in terms of that league form, Luke, we've spoken about the FA Cup, spoken about the Champions League. What's going on in the league? Because is it too simple to say it's kind of Villa competing on all fronts in terms of maybe a bit of a Champions League hangover at times? But what is going on in the league in terms of that consistency of results?
I think it's a bit of both. I think the biggest thing that I will say is that Champions League football, it's not just a game. You go to watch a Premier League game and it's like 90 minutes and you know what to expect. But this Champions League, it's a spectacle. We've got the tifos, we've got the fireworks, we've got the occasion, we've got the intensity. We've played in the group phase like Young Boys, Bologna, Celtic, Bayern Munich, Leipzig. Some real tough games, and emotionally it just saps it. Even as a fan, like after a Champions League game, especially the ones at home, like I'm drained for like 3 days and I'm not even playing. So what are the players like? And so that is understandable. The other aspect of it, and I know this is sort of like a general excuse that a lot of teams can say, but I think when you look at how the injuries affect your team, like we've had so many injuries at the back, especially, Pau Torres has been out, Cons has been out, Cash has been out. We had Mings out, and we was playing with Kamara, our best CDM, at centre back for about 3 games. He gets injured. Onana's been missing for ages. Barkley. So we've really been missing a lot of key players, and I think because we can't have a settled back four, it's just had a knock-on effect all through the team, and I think a lot of players are now starting to get back. So all of our defenders are back fully fit now. Pau's back, who is probably one of our most important players. He's been out for around 10 weeks. Onana's close to coming back. So I think that has a bit of a knock-on effect, like our double pivot at the minute. So Tielemans and McGinn are playing every game, every FA Cup game, every Champions League game, every Premier League game. And when we had that week a couple of weeks ago where we beat Chelsea, drew to Liverpool, and then we played Palace in such a short space of time, it just feels like it's a game too much, and it's just tough to manage, really. But the weird thing is, we had when we played Liverpool, we had that game rearranged from April that got moved into March, and I think we've only got 1 Premier League game in April, and it's against you. So we had a March where we're playing about 8 Premier League games, and now in April we've only got 1 Premier League game. So it's just mad, and I just think it is what it is, isn't it? We're deep in the Champions League, we're deep in the FA Cup, we're still trying to get Europe. I think if we get Conference League or Europa League, I think that would be a good season for Villa, backing up what we did last year.
For sure, 100%. Especially to kind of get any kind of European football, and it looks like you definitely will get into at least the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Got the quarterfinal of the FA Cup that you're probably going to get to Wembley in for the semis. It's a bloody good season still. Like you can't say, even despite the league form being a touch inconsistent, it's still an amazing season for Villa. But in terms of like the players that have kind of given you that consistency across the competitions, maybe not in the Premier League so much, but I want to focus on, you mentioned him there, Yuri Tielemans. How good has he been this season? Because I feel like he's kind of a Villa player that's been going under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, he's so good. I mean, don't forget he's stepped up from Douglas Luiz, who was one of our best players, and we had to sell for PSR. And when Tielemans signed for Villa on a free, he really struggled to get into the team. This was a player that had won the FA Cup, that had a Belgium international, and he had to learn Emery's way. And this season he's played every single game. He's scored the odd goal, but he's dictating play. He's progressive. He's defensively, he's so fit. I mean, there was this meme going around when we signed him from Leicester that, I don't know if you've ever seen it, like he's tracking back and he just stops running, and it was like, oh, he's fat and he can't run. But for us, he's everywhere. So yeah, he's been brilliant, and he's had to take on a lot because he's not been rotated. He's had a couple of games where he's looked a little bit loose. I think against Cardiff, he looked very loose in the FA Cup, but he backs it up, and he plays really well against Bruges. So he's someone that sort of very much goes under the radar for the work that he does, because he doesn't get loads of goals. He doesn't get loads of assists. I think there's this weird thing in football now where you judge a player based on goals and assists rather than what they actually play like. And I think he's brilliant for us.
So someone else that has been in the spotlight from the start of the season, really, Morgan Rogers, and he's a player that kind of tore us to shreds in that reverse fixture on the Wednesday night at Villa Park. He was everywhere that night. But how impressed have you been with him? Because I was listening to the Overlap or Stick to Football a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about the England players, the England midfield. That age-old debate. We've got Saka, Palmer, Bellingham. We've got all these great players in forward areas, but they didn't mention Rogers. And I was thinking, he's probably, like, there's an argument to be made that he's been the most consistent player out of all of those players that I've just mentioned this season in terms of like being a starter in Thomas Tuchel's England side. It's kind of come out of nowhere. You signed him from Borough, and then this season, I think there was that game. I think it was against Arsenal right at the start of the season where you lost narrowly. He was unplayable. And that was against really high level opposition. Arsenal were second in the Premier League. They've been fighting for the title for the last couple of seasons. So yeah, what have you made of Morgan Rogers?
Yeah, mate, that game against Arsenal, he tore them to shreds. I mean, he
Yeah,
put Partey and Rice like on the floor about 3 or 4 times. But what a journey he's been on, and I think football fans, football purists love a football journey, don't they? So we signed him last January, so he's been with us now around 13 months. And in that space of time, he's gone from the Championship to the Premier League to England International to Champions League. What a journey in 13 months. And this is part of Emery. Like, he's Emery's project. Whenever I watch him on the sidelines, he's being coached. He expects a lot from him, but he's really got the belief from Emery, which is massive for his game. So, if he gets the ball, he drives, he loses it, doesn't matter. Go and do it again. And he's really sort of like wanting him to keep going. But he's so good. I mean, he's playing so many games for Villa. But like you say, the way he drives with the ball is something like there's not many players that can do that. And I think, like you say, especially for England, in tight games when you just need that little bit of physicality, he's over 6 foot, he's massive. You can't get the ball off him. He started to clean up his finishing now as well. So he's a player that obviously isn't the finished article. Like when he first signed, his finishing wasn't the greatest, but he started to hit the ball a lot cleaner, getting in the right areas. And he's just, he's one of them players where, you just want him to do well. Like
yeah,
every time they pick up the ball, you just like, go on, and like I say, he's far from the finished article. Like he can get loads better, but I think what we've seen so far is development of what he was when he came to what he is now. It's absolutely fantastic.
yeah, for sure. I think. Did you listen to that interview that he did on the Rest is Football with Gary Lineker and Micah Richards? I would urge
Yeah.
any football fan to go and listen to that interview because he speaks so well, so grounded. And just, yeah, I'd be so happy if he kind of does break into that England first 11 because I do think he's quite similar to Bellingham in that way. Like he's just so progressive. When he gets on the ball, you can't get the ball off him. He's so big, he's so powerful, but always looking forward, always looking to beat a man. So yeah, I'm been really impressed with Morgan Rogers, and I'm not surprised that Villa fans have been the same. But in terms of the game on Saturday, Luke, we'll talk about the game itself. What have you made of Brentford this season? We had a chat about it on your channel, but what have you made about them?
Yeah, just more of the same. Really impressed with Frank. I mentioned when I watched the day in the life on Sky of him. Fantastic. I just love the way he coaches the team. I love how honest he is at times. But I just think he's really good. And in the Premier League, there's so many like really good coaches: Silva, Iraola, Emery. They're all in that bank of really good top coaches, and I think that's something that's really good in the Premier League at the minute. And I really do enjoy watching Brentford. Fun to watch. The front two are just incredible. I mentioned it on yours, like what they're going to do, but you can't stop it, which is very, very, very difficult to sort of think about your team coming up against that. And Wisa, I think he's so dangerous. What a finisher! And Bramo, really impressed with Damsgaard as well. Potter, left back, bombing on, going forward. Impressed with him. So I think, yeah, I've just massively been impressed with you. And I think it shows how far you've come, that you're in the mix for Europe still. So big game, because I think both teams really need the victory. So, yeah, I've only got good things to say about Brentford.
It is a big game. You're absolutely right. I'm just going to pull up the table just so that we can have a look and the people watching on YouTube can sort of have a look at how tight it is because it's probably a bigger game for us than it is for you, considering sort of that table. It kind of looks like if Brentford get a win on Saturday, it would still kind of keep us in that pack in terms of closing the gap on Villa yourselves. It would be taking points off a kind of rival in those positions. But have you enjoyed how tight it's been from like these teams, kind of from City in fourth all the way down? You'd argue, we were saying on your channel, to kind of Palace in 11th, considering their form. Have you enjoyed how tight it's been between these kind of middling clubs this season?
Not really, no. I wish it'd all go away. But no, it's class, isn't it? That like when we've been involved in this race for top four, like it's very much like we shouldn't be there. We don't deserve to be there. It's the big six, etc., the teams that should be there, and all of us that are sort of breaking that mold. We don't have a right to be there. So I absolutely love it that we're all there competing. And like I say, they're all really good teams as well. You can't look at it and think, oh, they don't really deserve to be there. They're no good. But the fact that we're all closely knit together, I think actually it's probably helping Villa this season as well. Especially you mentioned that we are a little bit inconsistent. And the fact that there's a bulk of teams that are quite close together, taking points off each other, it's kind of meaning that no one's really breaking away, which sort of keeps you in the mix. So I hope that Villa can end the season really well, which I still believe we can do that. So yeah, it's good to see that there's a lot of different teams that are up there really. And like you mentioned on my show, that the fact that the 3 teams that are coming up are going straight back down, you guys are an established Premier League team now, which I imagine when you first got promoted, that was something that you guys dreamed of being, like Brighton, established Premier League team. And this is the big thing about teams that are in the Championship now. Like, how do you dislodge one of these teams? Because they've got great managers, great players, and that gap between the Championship and Premier League survival now, for me, I think it's huge now.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're bang on. I think the quality of managers specifically, and the quality, like you mentioned, each kind of team has a bunch of good players in there, and it makes it difficult for kind of those 3 that come up. Parachute payments or not, kind of the distribution of wealth, I know, has kind of come into it a little bit in terms of how much money the Premier League teams get. But you're right, there's not really a blueprint for success in that. The only 2 clubs, or Palace you could argue as well, but Brentford and Brighton, they do have a kind of different approach to things. They use a lot of data in their analysis of games and their recruitment and stuff like that. But if you don't have that, then you kind of just, the only kind of other option that you've got, or the only other blueprint, is Forest, and they broke the bank when they came out. So it's really interesting to kind of talk about that. But in terms of just rounding things off in terms of the game itself, Luke, little bit of extra spice in this fixture potentially. I think the last game at the Gtech last season, there was a red card for Ben Mee. Ollie Watkins kind of soured his relationship with Brentford fans somewhat in that game as well, with the celebration that a lot of Brentford fans didn't like. Emi Martinez and Neil Maupay having a shit house off in that game. That was funny. What can we expect from Saturday, Luke?
I'm glad he don't play for you no more, mate, because he's an absolute nightmare. So the fact that he's not there is even sweeter. Tough game, tough place to go to. I mean, no Premier League team wants to go to the Gtech. Let's get that straight, because your record there is good. I mean, at the minute, it's probably not so great. Our away record is terrible at the minute, so it should even itself out. I think Villa will rotate from maybe some of the players that started the game against Bruges, but our depth in our squad is really good. So it's not like you're taking a poor player out and putting a poor player. You know what I mean? Like, they're all they all deserve to be playing at the minute. So I think we'll try and control the game like what we normally do, possession-based football. But you guys on transition are very, very dangerous, and I think if we can get to the level that we played against you at home and limit you guys to not having Mbeumo, Wisa on transition, a 2v2, etc., or a 2v3, then I think we'll stand a decent chance. But I think it's going to be a tough game. It's 5:30 on a Saturday, so I always feel like those games, they're quite exciting, aren't they? They're never dull. So tough game, and I think it'll be 2 good teams going together, trying to get the victory.
Good stuff, Luke. I think that'd be a good point to round off the pod. We'll be back with a full-time show after the Villa game. Remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts ahead of the Villa game. Who are you scared of in the Villa team? There's quite a few to go through. They've got a lot of depth, as Luke just mentioned. But Morgan Rogers, it'll be the first time he's played at the Gtech, I want to say, because we played you around Christmas time last year, I believe. He tore us to shreds in that away fixture. So let us know who you fear in the Villa side, whether we can get the 3 points, all of those good things in the comment section down below. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels. Follow us on the socials at the Ealing Road on Twitter, at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Luke, mate, an absolute pleasure. I'll put all of your links in the bio of this video. And yeah, good luck. Well, actually, no, not good luck for Saturday, but good luck for the rest of the season after Saturday.
Likewise, mate.